Hello, 8th graders. As you guys are getting ready to finish up the year and you want to finish on a strong note, you might be thinking about how am I going to set up this 4-paragraph discussion section for my science Rube Goldberg machine. So after you've done the video, or really you don't even need to wait until the video is over because you've been thinking about this project for a while, you have some plans in place. But as you're thinking about doing the written portion, you're going to want to look through the outline down here for the 4 paragraphs that you're going to write for this discussion section. The first paragraph is pretty straightforward. It just says here, to introduce your project, write out something like the introduction that you recorded in your video. So that's just going to go through a step-by-step walkthrough of exactly how your machine works. You know, you maybe start with a ball rolling down a ramp and that hits some dominoes and that pushes a car. Whatever the order of events is, that's exactly what you're going to want to share, and that's going to really help your teacher be reminded about what your project included so that we remember as we're looking at your other parts what exactly you did and what was unique about your machine. That's really helpful for us as we're going through and reading it, and it should be a good intro for your whole discussion section. So that's paragraph 1. Paragraph 2 says to explain 4 of the 8 physics concepts seen in the project, meaning that there's 4 down here. You're going to bold and underline each vocabulary word that you use. Extra credit will be given if you provide data. So let's look down here. So there's a list of 11 different physics concepts, and actually simple machines, that's going to come in the 3rd paragraph, so we'll ignore that for now. So there's these 10 physics concepts that we've learned throughout the course of the year. The reason that we're doing this is it's a great review for the exam to remember some of these terms. You're going to pick 4 that you either remember really well and you think you can explain well, or 4 topics that you want to revisit as you're thinking about prepping for the exam. Any 4 of these topics you're going to illustrate, depict, show with your writing how these physics concepts are acting on your machine. The only rule here is let's not have 2 of the terms be speed and velocity, but otherwise you could talk about all 3 of Newton's laws. That would count as 3 separate terms. And then maybe you also want to talk about force. That works as well. Or if you want to talk about work and power, because that's fresher in your memory, and then maybe you want to go back to the beginning and talk about velocity and acceleration, that works too. But any 4 terms, and we can kind of ignore this 8, explain any 4 physics concepts seen in the project. So, of course, anything that's in motion has speed and velocity, so that's something to talk about. Acceleration is the measure of how fast velocity changes. We know that as things are falling towards the ground, they are accelerating. You could talk about why things are accelerating as they move towards the ground and what forces may hinder their ability to accelerate. Force, the reason anything in your machine works or moves is because there's been an unbalanced push or pull. So talk about what materials need to push each other in order to keep the motion of the machine going. Then we have Newton's 3 laws. An object at rest tends to stay at rest. An object in motion tends to stay in motion. Newton's 2nd law talks about the relationship between force and mass on acceleration. You may remember that a heavier object, one with more mass, when pushed with the same force, will accelerate less. And if an object has lower mass, pushed with the same force, it will accelerate more. So those are some things to talk about. If you have dominoes that hit something heavy and light or something like that, you could talk about how the change in mass with the same amount of force impacts acceleration. That's just one idea, but there's lots to talk about there. And then Newton's third law, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. It requires two objects. So if that's illustrated in your simple machine, in your Rube Goldberg machine, that would be something good to talk about. Then we have some of the later terms. Well, momentum, that relates to Newton's three laws. Momentum relates to mass and velocity. So when something is hit with more momentum, that's either because it had more mass or it was moving at a faster velocity. Momentum is a transfer of energy, so that's really important to the motion of your machine. Work, now if we think down here, work and power, those are our latest two terms, so that could be something to talk about. You could talk about when work happens, or things that maybe aren't work in your machine, things that are work. You could talk about power. Power is when work happens and the rate at which it happens, so the rate at which work is done, or work divided by time, all things. So this is all going back to this important paragraph number 2. Paragraph number 1 is not going to be worth as much. Paragraph 2, 3, and 4 will count a little bit more. So it's important to make sure that you bold and underline any of the 4 vocabulary words you use. And you're not just stating them. You're not going to just say, oh, there was a force that happened. Oh, Newton's second law happened. You know, you want to make sure that you're showing your teacher as we are reading this that you really understand what those terms mean. So we should shoot for this. If we're thinking about 4 physics concepts, and each one is explained in about 2 to 3 sentences, we're going to say that this paragraph should be about 8 to 12 sentences. So that's 2 to 3 per term. To really show your teacher that you know what those terms mean. Again, don't forget to bold and underline the words that you choose. Of course, you could go, and if you wanted to use more than 4 words, you might end up doing that anyways, especially because force is such a big one, momentum is such a big one, with having the motion continue of the parts of your machine. If you end up doing more than 4, that's great. We can end up grading just the 4 best ones that you do. Moving on to paragraph 3, you're going to explain 4 simple machines seen in the project. Again, don't forget to bold and underline each of those words. And on this document, there are all 6 of the simple machines that we learned listed out here. So there's all different types of levers, pulleys, wedges, wheel and axle, screw, and an inclined plane. So you will definitely have 4 of those. You need to have 4 of those as part of your project listed out in your paragraph 3. This paragraph is going to be a little bit shorter because we haven't spent as much time on each of those terms, right? We've spent a lot of time on each one of these topics down below, but have only just spent the last month or so on the simple machines. So we can say about 2 sentences for each. So that's going to put us at about 8 sentences. 2 per simple machine. And you might be thinking, what am I going to say besides just pointing it out? Well, you might want to talk about how it makes work easier. You might want to talk about how it multiplies force, how it might make the work easier. I mean, in a in a scientific sense, how it makes work easier by multiplying the force, but also in a real concrete sense, it might make work easier because it's easier than reaching down to pick something up. A pulley might be easier. It doesn't actually decrease the amount of force that you need to use if you're using a pulley, but it might mean less motion on your part to go haul things up and down. So that's it for paragraph 3. The last paragraph, the way you're going to wrap it up, is you're going to identify at least one problem you encountered while building the machine and explain how you overcame this difficulty. This problem, and you just need one of them. Of course, you could do more, but you just need one problem. It should not be, complaining about your partners. It shouldn't be complaining about the project. It shouldn't be that, oh, I wish I had these other materials. But as you look at this, if you look at your process, what you had to adjust, you are making adjustments as you build the machine unconsciously. You're constantly making changes to make the machine work better and better. So pick a problem that you had to fix about the machine. Why didn't it work? What adjustments did you make? Maybe something didn't move the way you wanted it to. What adjustments did you have to make your project work, to make your Rube Goldberg machine work? So the problem should be, I won't write over all this. Your problem should be, why didn't the machine work the way you wanted to at first? The hope is that you made adjustments and in the end your machine did work the way you wanted to, but talk about the adjustments that you made in order to have a fully functioning machine. Again, you're going to talk, this question goes on to say, what did you have to adjust? That's all related. Conclude this paragraph by answering just one, it says at least one. Conclude this paragraph by answering at least one of the following questions. What did you learn? How could you make it better in the future? What's the major takeaway from your project? You really only need to answer one of those questions to wrap up this project. Think about all of the work that we've done in 8th grade over the course of the year, all the labs, all the projects, all the engineering components to the class. What did you take away from this final engineering project? And that's how you will wrap up your essay. Be sure, guys, this final 4-paragraph essay is going to count as part of your final exam, so do take the time to proofread it. Don't submit it, as soon as you're done. Take some time after you're done, walk away, come back, proofread, make sure it's your best work, and you guys should be set up for success. Good luck.